this convention in DC, and Congress won't give them that charter. And they try to charter religious scholarship. Congress won't do that. Congress charters is non-sectarian. And so we brag about being the first congressional charter non-sectarian. So it's like, no, that was my accident. We didn't want that. But the board does. Yeah. So we were non-sectarian.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good to see you. I think we're gonna have a jam-packed, fun couple days here. I'm really excited to listen and learn from all of you. So welcome to the Fall 2022 University Studying Slavery Conference here at the University of Virginia. After nearly 2 years of pandemic and only virtual meetings, I am really delighted, right? So many of you have traveled here to Charlottesville with us for the second in-person USS conference of 2022. Some of you may have been with us in the spring in North Carolina, hosted by Guilford College and Wake Forest University. Really good to be back in person. Our conference theme is Legacies of Slavery, Landscapes of Segregation. And we know that events during the conference will showcase some of the fine work our friends and partners here at UVA and Charlottesville have been working on since many of you were last here in March 2020. That's when we had a USS meeting here. For those of you who you'll remember, this was literally just days before the world shut down. Together, these UVA and community projects that you'll hear and see from, along with a lot of other stories while you're here, have focused on telling a fuller history about our history, rethinking those stories we privilege, and redefining how we interpret that history. Collectively, we have been fearlessly following truth wherever it may lead. I truly hope you learn a lot, make new friends, and leave us with a wealth of new ideas. Please lean in and learn. Attend panels, break bread with students tomorrow at the midday poster session, go on the optional tours, participate in the events we are offering. I think you'll find the experience deeply rewarding. Again, good to be back in person for the second time this year, even if I'm already sweating and it's 9:10 in the morning. So time to get down to business. I am honored to introduce our first speaker today. James E. Ryan serves as the 9th president of the University of Virginia, an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and a leading expert on law and education. President Ryan has written extensively about the ways in which law structures opportunity. His work has addressed school desegregation, school finance, school choice, and so much more. His scholarly work and interest fit perfectly with the ongoing work of research, acknowledgement, and atonement at UVA and in our community. Over 4 years ago, as he was preparing to assume the presidency here at UVA, he was already listening to the advice of our Slavery Commission that we had to offer as he worked with his predecessor, Teresa Sullivan, on shaping the next phase of the university's investigation into its own past. With his input, wisdom, vision, and support, we launched and continue a successor commission examining a century of the university's life after emancipation in 1865. His ongoing support of our work has been so important. I know I speak for the entire commission when I say we are honored to work for you and follow your lead. This new commission has been a shared community project since its birth. It is thus but one small element of a list of initiatives and accomplishments over the past 4 years that has transformed this university under his leadership and reimagined the university as a thoughtful partner with the communities it is embedded in. So everyone, please welcome University of Virginia President James Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. Kirt, thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's terrific that there are so many of the 90 participant schools participating either in person or via live stream. And I'd also like to welcome members of the descendant communities who are here with us either in person or online, as well as those from museums and community organizations, students, faculty, staff, and community members. It is truly an honor to be with all of you. I'd like to start by giving a huge thanks to Kirt Andrea Douglas and Ashley Schmidt for their work in organizing this conference, which is jam-packed with terrific sessions of presenters. Kirt, as many of you know, is Assistant Dean and Professor at UVA's College of Arts and Sciences. He's also co-chair of the President's Commission on Slavery in the University, which was the impetus, as he mentioned, of much of the work that we and other universities are doing in this area. Because history did not end with abolition, as Kirt mentioned, we established a second commission, and that is studying the university in the age of segregation, which focuses on the time period between 1865 and 1965. Kirt co-chairs this commission as well, together with Andrea Douglas, who's the executive director of the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. Ashley Schmidt, who many of you have probably met, is a historian who staffs the commission and also works with the consortium. I'm incredibly grateful to Kirt, Andrea, and Ashley, but also to all of you and everyone involved in this work at universities across the country and around the world. Universities are somewhat strange organizations at times. We tend to be a bit inconsistent between how we approach and treat the outside world and how we treat the university itself. Universities, for example, often push for change through the work of their faculty to the outside world, but remain notably conservative when it comes to change within universities themselves. And so it is with history. Universities are often quite good at examining history that happens in the world outside of universities, but not always so good at examining history that occurs within universities. And yet this work is incredibly vital, particularly the work that you're involved in, for at least 3 reasons. First, the fundamental purpose of a university is to pursue the truth. The search for truth should be constant and unending. Discovery is at the heart of our mission as a university. And looking hard at our own histories is a way to demonstrate to students and to the world that we take this idea seriously. It's also a way for us to fully understand our full past. In the work done at UVA by the Commission on Slavery in the University, for example, we were able to document the myriad ways in which the University of Virginia was built by enslaved laborers. Slavery in every way imaginable, the Commission's report reveals, was central to the project of designing, funding, building, and maintaining the school. From its beginning through the end of the Civil War, the University of Virginia was the work of many individuals, including hundreds of enslaved laborers. It began on that July day when Jefferson marked off that old field with his overseer Edmund Bacon, an Irish builder named James Dinsmore, and 10 enslaved hands. Together, the group used twine, shingles, and pegs to mark off the foundations of the university. After marking it off, Jefferson set the men at work. As the report goes on to say, the work done to supply and create the university's built landscape was overwhelmingly done by enslaved people who terraced land, hauled dirt, dug foundations, shaped and fired bricks, and did tin work, carpentry, roofing, and stonemasonry. These laborers came from across Virginia and for the most part were recorded using a single name, if any name at all. One of those enslaved laborers was named Isabella Gibbons. Isabella was born into slavery, but we know very little about her life as a child, including her day and place of birth. Around the year 1850, a science professor at UVA purchased her as an enslaved laborer, and she served as his family's cook until 1853. Though it was illegal, Isabella learned to read. A few years later, she married William Gibbons, also an enslaved laborer owned by another university professor. They had 4 children, and Isabella taught each of them to read. In her final 4 years of enslavement, she worked as a nurse in the Charlottesville General Hospital during the Civil War. In 1865, with the end of the war and the general emancipation, Isabella immediately went to work to ensure that all freed people would experience the full fruits of their freedom. She became the first teacher of color in a school run by the New England Freedmen's Aid Society, what became decades later the Jefferson School. Scholars have been able to identify a letter written by her dated March 1867 and published in the Freedmen's Journal. In it, she speaks about what it's like to live as a free person, alongside those who owned enslaved laborers, and about the haunting memory of slavery. She wrote, "Can we forget the crack of the whip, cowhide, whipping post, the auction block, the handcuffs, the manacles, the iron collar, the Negro trader tearing the young from its mother's breast as well as from the lioness? Have we forgotten that by those horrible cruelties, hundreds of our race have been killed? No, we have not, nor ever will." Isabella's words are inscribed on UVA's memorial to enslaved laborers, dedicated in 2021. The memorial is inscribed with the 577 names of enslaved men and women who lived and worked on grounds, along with 311 phrases indicating someone's kinship or occupation, such as grandmother or stonecutter. Kirt and members of the President's Commission on Slavery and the university led the effort to discover those names, studying faculty minutes, chairman's journals, buildings and grounds records, and faculty and student diaries. Researchers estimate that at least 4,000 more names of those enslaved on ground remain unknown, represented today on the memorial by 4,000 dark ashes in the stone, and work to discover those names will continue. Today, the memorial is used as a quiet but powerful space for reflection and understanding, and I hope you'll get a chance to see it in person if you haven't already. So the second reason why doing this work is important is that it is difficult, if not impossible, to move forward without first reckoning with the past. This is as true for universities as it is for any organization. History, as Maya Angelou said, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. In understanding our history, in facing it, we're better prepared to grapple with the challenges of our present day. Whether the white supremacist march in Charlottesville, UVA in August of 2017, or the noose placed around the Homer statue here at UVA just a few weeks ago, we can use the lessons of history to put these events in context, to understand their significance and the motivations behind them, and to guide our response. We can also use the past to mark and guide our efforts to shrink the gap between our aspirations and our lived realities as an institution and as a community. The third and related reason for doing this work is because the legacy of slavery is still felt in ways both structural and personal to this day. When we dedicated the memorial to enslaved laborers, we had many members of our descendant community in attendance, and I was moved and privileged to hear their stories, which remain vivid even with the passage of time. This is not to suggest that our country or that our universities have not made great strides in the last century and a half. They have, and all are quite different and much better places than they were in the 19th century. But there also is truth to William Faulkner's famous line that the past is never dead. It's not even past. For all of these reasons and more, it's important to continue this work and to uncover the stories not yet told and memorialized. Here at UVA, we will continue this work under the auspices of what we are calling the Gibbons Project, named for Isabella and William Gibbons. And I'm pleased to let all of you know that Kirt has agreed to direct this project. In this role, Kirt will oversee our continuing archival and genealogical research related to UVA's descendant community. The project will also provide support for Kirt and his colleagues to continue and strengthen our leadership of the Consortium of Universities Studying Slavery, and will allow him to devote more time and energy to this incredibly worthwhile endeavor. I'm excited about the work ahead and to learn more about those who help build and serve the University of Virginia and universities across the country and around the world. So thanks again to all of you for being here. Thanks for the work that you're doing, and thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you. I wish you the very best in the work ahead.
Okay, thank you, President Ryan, for that warm welcome. Thanks to everybody. Again, good to be here. I want to take one moment to just comment on how this conference is perhaps atypical, right? Many of you, if you are scholars, you've been to your disciplinary conference. I'm a historian, so it's a whole bunch of historians hanging out together, talking like scholars. This conference, since 2017, we were here in this room then, has tried to do something a little different, to understand this work and the problems we're trying to solve as ones that aren't contained within discipline and aren't really contained within the academy. So I hope you'll pay attention to the panels, to the people sitting next to you and around you, and notice that, right, you have a really interesting mix of scholars, students, museum professionals, maybe historic preservationists, descendants, and community activists, all here learning and engaging in conversations with one another that I think help us all move the needle on the work that we are all doing at our individual institutions. So the collective work of, it's now 98 schools in 6 countries, by the way, universities studying slavery, and I'm pretty sure Ashley Schmidt and I have at least 2 other emails in our inbox that we're not going to solve until next week. So we're going to break the century mark probably in the next month. Pretty amazing. Know that the work of those schools goes far beyond examining slavery. We've heard it in President Ryan's comments about the work we're doing here. My bad joke about this every time is we've simply not changed the acronym. University Studying Slavery and Racism. We were alive in the 80s, maybe not the best acronym. My students don't get that joke anymore. Interesting times. So institutions, including us here at UVA, now examine the much longer but equally difficult history of racism. It's hard work, but it's necessary as each school strives to better live up to its own 21st century mission, vision, and values. To create equity and justice in the present, right, we have to first confront that past. So I'm honored to have been doing that work with so many of you for the past decade. I cannot put into words how much it means that we're all here together again. And it was lovely to see many of you last night at the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center for our opening reception and thought-provoking conversation with Christy Coleman. I think her remarks, and this is one of those things you don't know that it's all going to work out this perfectly, but her remarks in that conversation captured beautifully the themes of this conference. So back to UVA. Our history at UVA and locally is fascinating. It's messy, it's difficult. Our work since 2013 has been to highlight those realities, both as a truth-telling project and as a form of counterpoint to the many decades of mythologizing, particularly at the university, but also in the community, about Thomas Jefferson, about the university, about Charlottesville, and about Albemarle County, that insistently obscured the myriad contributions of the unsung founders of this institution and of this community, who until the dawn of the 20th century often made up half or more of the local population. So the local white gaze in all this, however, was always upon the founding fathers, white men of property, and a cultish devotion to the idea that Charlottesville was in fact a genteel and exceptional seat of democratic civilization. Of course, this is our local historical field, but the broad outlines should be familiar. Our local history is a microcosm of American history. So as we rethink and reinterpret that long past here, we have begun to reveal what we describe as an intellectual and visual genealogy, linking the birth of Charlottesville in the 18th century to the founding of the university in the early 19th century, to the age of segregation, and all the way to the present. Simply put, the history is not exceptional, but it remains revelatory. Before we begin our first session of breakout panels, and the entire conference in earnest, we ask you today, after Andrea, Douglas, and I have finished our introductory remarks, we're going to ask you to sit in silence for about 7 minutes. We're going to run a slideshow. It's a collection of local images documenting people, places, and events in a nearly 200-year history here. Remember, the theme of the conference is Legacies of Slavery, Landscapes of Segregation. So the slideshow begins to reveal the white gaze, how local white leaders have often imagined and understood the local landscape, local people, and their world. These images are not comprehensive, they do not include every moment, and they omit most of the voluminous body of vicious anti-black racist cultural production that characterized much of the century after the general emancipation in 1865. That doesn't mean they don't have anything to tell us. That was a lot. As President Ryan mentioned, right, the historical timeline to on our memorial to enslaved laborers ends with a quote from Isabella Gibbons in 1867. Reminding all who read her words that free people expected to claim the full fruits of freedom and would not forget who enslaved them, who fought a war to perpetuate their bondage. Her letter was a warning, and she was prescient. Remember, this is 1867, 2 years after the general emancipation. 3 years after she wrote that letter, Virginia segregated its public schools as those in power began a long process of denying Black Virginians citizenship rights as they crafted landscapes of segregation. We hope many of these images, such quotidian photographs of often seemingly mundane moments, quietly hint at the ways in which white elites locally remained committed to a vision of progress that included perpetual subjugation of their Black neighbors. Without doubt, a central legacy of slavery. So as you're watching these, pay attention to what or who the photographer often focuses the camera on. Who and what get privilege? How do the portraits convey white community values and emotions about power? Just how many lives and histories do you notice getting figuratively buried or erased? What's missing from most of these images? And finally, when you do see an image that challenges the myths or narratives, who or what do you hear or see? Of course, many of these images come from after 1870, but should recognizably have clear pre-1865 antecedents. Racism in the age of segregation and today cannot be understood without first coming to terms with the racist ideologies generated in the era of human bondage. We hope you will keep that intellectual genealogy in mind as you look, listen, and learn over the next 3 days. We hope too, this is really important, there's a lot of other things going on. Off in the room over there are a series of exhibits. UVA Press is here. There are other groups with tables. Please go in, visit, browse, and check in with them. And check the program for some of the other optional tours later today. Of particular interest, besides the memorial tour that President Ryan mentioned, that will be this afternoon, there's also the Visions of Progress exhibit in the Special Collections Library. It is stunning, and it provides a powerful rebuttal to the progressive ideals so many of this morning's images attempted to convey. We hope you'll visit the memorial. Please do. Go on that descendant experience. It will be amazing. We trust you will meet and engage with the descendants of enslaved communities here at UVA. Take time to do a historical tour of grounds, or before you leave, I know, weather permitting, tour downtown Charlottesville and see how those competing visions of progress continue a contest for space and place here. I'd like to now turn it over to my good friend, with whom I've had the pleasure of working with at every step for the past 10 years. If you were with us last night, you've already met her. Please welcome my President's Commission on the University in the Age of Segregation co-chair, Dr. Andrea Douglas.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I get to wear my art historian hat this morning, and I'm not really going to offer much more than addition to the comments that Kirt has made, except try to focus a little bit on those images that you're about to see. Because I think that as we really begin to think about this long landscape, certainly we want to view these images from a particular position, but I, and the work that I do at the African American Heritage Center, are the other side of that story in some way, right? And so for me, in looking at these images, while they tell a particular story about a gaze, they also tell another narrative. And I also want to point to that narrative as well. And so my comments are not very long, but they are meant to be to focus you and to point you into the work of looking at images. Not just contemplating, not just thinking about where we're going in the future, but sitting here. Because as you look at these images, what you're really seeing in these 7 minutes is certainly the local landscape. And as Kirt says, we can extrapolate from this place into larger histories. The condition of African Americans in America, in the world, There are many similarities, whether you move from one place to another. There's something about the condition of enslavement. But there's something about the condition of enslavement here. And it's the here that we want to sort of pull you into as well. So it's not just looking at images, it's seeing what those images tell you. And in some of those images, on more than one occasion, you'll see, for instance, a black man and a horse. And in reading those images, you'll understand that that horse, the description of the very physicality of that horse, even when the image is not the best one you could find, is quite pronounced next to that man holding the horse. And it's easy to read that image as one that says the black body remains utilitarian. That in relationship to the horse, it is no more than the post to which the horse is set. But you also have to look at the date. That image is from 1916. That's post-emancipation. That's well into the first quarter of the 20th century. So you kind of read that image within that context as well. There are other images that you'll see. You'll see images of our beloved Isabella Gibbons. And already twice you've heard us speak about her because she is an important character in the story. Extremely important because, number one, she's an educated woman as a freedom. When she leaves freedom, she's an educated woman, already prepared to pass on something. And when you think about the words, "we will not forget," ask yourself the question, who is she talking to? We will not forget. It's not small that she's saying that in 1867. Historians, what's 1867? What's the important date about 1867, Virginia? All of it, right? All of that. So for Isabella Gibbons to be speaking those words in 1867, you have to ask yourself the question, who's the we? Who's she talking to? Who's she talking to in the moment of universal suffrage? Because at that moment, the African American community begins to make demands. We want our vote, this is what we want. And she's an educator of almost 200 students. People who have been going to school on the weekends. People who have been going to school at night. People who have very quickly begun to create and claim for themselves that moment of freedom. Isabella says in another moment, "On my first day of teaching, I didn't quite know what I should do. So I taught in the way that I was taught by Anna Gardner. I taught my students by rote." And what she teaches them is the 83rd Psalm. Imagine that. This second generation being taught about the notion that our enslavers are trying to re-enslave us. God protect us. Do not let that happen. Right? So when you see that image from 1867, there is that image of who she's talking to. She's speaking to people from the Jefferson School. And I want you to take a look at the very top row in which she resides. From your vantage point, she will be the second person from the right. Okay? That will be the figure of Isabella Gibbons. I want you to look at what the people on that row are holding in their hands. Because one holds a book, one holds a globe, and others hold diplomas. Who is she talking to in that image? And I want to create this space of juxtaposition because it's important. We're talking about the landscape of enslavement. We're talking about the fact that you have images, as Kirt describes, that are about the very notion of maintaining the physicality of enslavement as an image body. And you'll see that over and over and over again. But by the time you get to the last few images, there's an image from 1944 of the hospital boys. I want you to look at that image in relationship to the image that comes just before it. I want you to look at the pose, and I want you to look at the posture of those hospital boys. Because in 1948, those men and the maids at the University of Virginia will accomplish a work slowdown that will ultimately force the university hospital to pay better wages in 1944. And these are the same people who will have inherited from Isabella Gibbons this notion about we will not forget. So what we're hoping over the course, I believe, of this time to describe for you is this landscape that suggests that the need to create a space of whiteness, to articulate over and over and over again in the images of white communal space, this body that stands in the background, that stands off to the side, that there is in fact another narrative around that body. And that when we're thinking about the descendants, these people also hold a narrative that makes them as much auteur in this story as others that we would be thinking about and focusing on. And then we also have to remember that when the very last image of this slide deck is from 2817. I think it's Kirt's personal image. July 8th, no?
That's it.
Okay, even that. Good art, photographer, our good friend, S.A. Amos. July 8th, 2017. And that's the moment that the Klan came to Charlottesville. And not just the Klan, but the rogue Klan. They didn't come in plain dress and claiming they were the Klan. They came in the clothing and enrolled in the ideology. And they came here. And they came to the courthouse. They didn't just come to any part of the landscape. They created a set of symbolic relationships that articulate the very origins of this place. They came to the playground of Jefferson, Monroe, and Madison. If you go to the courthouse, it's all over the place. There are plaques that talk about how they used to drink over here, and the house used to do things like that over there, and they went to the Eagle Tavern and blah, 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 blah. All over that 4-block space. This is the playground of the founding fathers. This is where the Klan came to make their stand. Right? Many of us were like, oh, isn't that a defunct organization? These people, they're coming, there's only like 8 or 9 of them, it's not going to be a big deal. But the melee that ensued after that suggests just how powerful those symbols are, and just how important the decision was to be in that place at that moment, at that time. So, for me, as we're moving forward and thinking about that, and we're asking you to take these minutes to sort of prepare your mind, as the art historian in me am, spend some time in them. If you need us to re-roll some of it, we'll give you access. Right? But these juxtapositions matter. These juxtapositions hope to tell you the full scope of this space. And hopefully you go home and you take those images with you as you're starting to do that work. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sitting in silence. Before we get going, we're about to get out of this room. I just want to take a few minutes, some housekeeping, and I want to do a quick set of thank yous. In particular, I want you to notice in your folder, you have all sorts of pamphlets from our co-sponsors and partners. I want to thank all of them for helping us put this all together, but please check out their materials. Next, I want to give a shout out to the entire President's Commission on University and Age Segregation. It's a big commission. It's a service commission, and I want to thank everyone for their hard work, energy, and goodwill. Our conference committee that helped shape the event you're at was led by Vice Provost Louis Nelson. Professor Nelson is here this morning, but you will see him at some point. And Alumnus Khalifa Lee set everything in motion. They crafted the conference theme, set meeting dates, identified co-sponsors and partners, and identified potential speakers. So thank you for your work in getting this to us today. Most importantly, we have one person I think we really have to thank. Everyone who works on these projects, all right, it's a service project. I know this is the same at many of your institutions. It's energy, goodwill, and hard work. We are fortunate to have a single person on our commission whose job it actually is to make all this work. She is a historian with a PhD. I think you all know who she is. Andrea, Douglas, and I daily ask her to find more than 24 hours in each day to do more work. Somehow, she succeeds. We ask her to simultaneously be a historian, a researcher, and, you all now know this, an event planner. We are really lucky to have her on our team. So as you enjoy the conference, please remember that everything, if you see a flower, a sign, a meeting, an event, it is Ashley Schmidt's blood, sweat, and tears behind it. So I know Ashley's outside, but we have a round of applause for her. I know for everybody, right, 2022 has been a tumultuous year. We're simultaneously ready to move beyond social distancing, virtual anything and everything, and what seems like an endless river of bad news. But we're also exhausted in the many continuing disruptions of the pandemic, right? The great resignation, staff shortages, supply chain issues continue to test our patience and endurance. I can speak directly to that for the last 2 weeks in getting ready for this. So we did not include in your conference materials a 2022 bingo card. But I almost wish we had. I know you all have imaginary bingo cards in your head, right? About this, it's been one of those years. So you'll find in your list with the program a single sheet listing some corrections and updates for the conference. Please take note, there's a shift in some of the times on Friday. We are so sorry to announce that Professor Mia Bay, who was scheduled to give the closing plenary talk on Friday, came down with COVID a few days ago and had to cancel her talk. So we wish her a speedy recovery. I will say at least, I know I had COVID cancellation on my bingo card. So sad to say, but I was somewhat ready for that. Did anybody have a major fall hurricane aiming straight for a town on the edge of Blue Ridge Mountains on bingo card? Nope, I didn't. Did not. But here Ian comes. So nothing to worry about, just know that we are watching and tracking the storm. And if there need to be schedule changes, particularly for Saturday, we will let you know right here in this room on Friday. And again, we're watching that closely. Today, at lunch, after the morning panels, this is your chance to go explore UVA and the corner, which is the district a few blocks that way. Just want you to know there are tons of food options. You don't even have to leave the building. You can go down to the first floor. There's an area we call the Path that has a bunch of eateries in it. You can walk a few hundred yards to the amphitheater in that direction, and there are a whole bunch of cool food trucks out there that you can order food from. And you can walk to the corner to get meals. So enjoy the beautiful weather while we have it. Stroll past the rotunda, and just all we ask is watch your time, and please be back for the afternoon sessions. At the conclusion of this afternoon's breakout panels at 3:45 p.m. today, you'll see reference to 3 guided optional tours. These are just show up and join the tour if you like. We want you to do at least one of them. All start outside the building here on the 3rd floor. One will be a descent-led memorial experience. The best way to do it is go right out the door this is the south end of the building, and walk straight out onto the green past Peabody Hall, and that tour will start out there. There will also be a university guide service historical tours of the university available. Those are going to start out that same south entrance, but to the right. You'll see a large structure, sort of a monument. It is the Whispering Wall. It used to be a monument to the Confederate soldier and spy. It has since been cleansed of that, and it's just the Whispering Wall. So they'll meet on the plaza out there. A third event will be a kind of guided tour of the Visions of Progress exhibit, which is in Special Collections Library. So in that direction, not a long walk. And that will start just outside the north entrance of Newcomb Hall here on the 3rd floor. Professor John Mason will greet everyone and then lead you to the Special Collections Library to see the exhibit. On Friday, everything starts at 9:45 here in this building. For those of you who are the institutional representatives of a university studying slavery member institution, there's an 8:30 meeting. So that's just for member institution representatives. Everybody else, just show up here a little bit before 9:45 and we'll get going. We will serve box lunches here in Newcomb on Friday. So please plan to be here, eat, and listen to the fantastic plenary session we have lined up for you. And after lunch, we're going to ask you to stick around. We're going to have treats and coffee in the South Meeting Room, right out here in the South, in this building. So literally a short walk. It's a undergraduate student poster session, and we really want you to be there. You know, after the pandemic, getting students to have a research project they can put on a poster and talk about is nearly impossible, right? 18 months in Zoom didn't lend itself to this. So we managed to get 7 or 8 students from more than one university to be here. We really want you to come. This started in 2018 as part of this conference at Toulouse College. And it was an amazing moment. We walked out of panels, we talked to students, and we talked to one another. So we really want you to go get some coffee, grab a donut, talk to students, and interact for about an hour there. A really great moment to engage. And finally, on Friday, we will wrap up here the plenary session in this ballroom. We'll have a few announcements when that's done. And then we're inviting everyone to a closing reception at Alumni Hall. And I'll remind everyone of this tomorrow. Alumni Hall is about a 10-minute walk, kind of down the hill. It's across the busy street. If you parked in Central Grounds parking garage, you were fairly close to it. And we will help direct everyone there. But we hope you come by, wrap up the full 2 days of conference event with food and drinks and some time to relax. It's a lovely space. We'll have a good meal. And I think a great way to end the formal portion of the conference. So, that's it. Go have a great conference, and we'll see you back here at the lunch session. I've already lost this. Thank you. Sorry, I don't even know what time it is.